The food consumed by our parents can affect our health, and we all know that depending how we eat will affect our quality of life, how we look, how we feel, but very few people are actually aware of the genetic impact that it will have over future generations. Today, we humans are the way we are as a result of what our ancestors ate. The changes that occurred through time had an enormous impact over the physique and health, what we ate and the environment that we were exposed to, the things that we breathe, and many things more. All variables modify our DNA and the DNA of our kids. So whether you like it or not, health is transgenerational. This is very important to keep in mind because if our grandmother smoked during the pregnancy of one of our parents, we have a higher chance of developing asthma than another person. What our parents ate and the substances that they were exposed to not only affect the risk of diseases, but it also affect our looks and our physical development. How? Whenever we have a nutritional deficit and an excess of toxin substances like alcohol, they modify the functionality of our genes, our DNA, altering something called epigenetics. For example, fetal alcohol syndrome, which happens whenever alcohol is consumed during pregnancy, modifies facial expression of the baby, and this is nothing new. We've known this for decades. Therefore, different nutritional deficits can affect the baby differently, such as the total height of that individual. Studies have shown how supplementing a group of mice with a cocktail of vitamins and minerals versus another group that has nutritional deficits can result in difference of the total weight of that offspring and a higher likelihood of developing diseases. The more nutritional deficits exist, can mean a higher chance of developing obesity as a defense and coping mechanism. Other studies in mice have shown how diets that are low in fats or substances like choline and lecithin resulted in the birth of mice that were less smart. And this is obvious because these are essential for brain development. Nutritional deficits affect many different areas of the body. Optimum levels of B vitamin family are essential for the development of organs in the baby, including the brain. Therefore, you can imagine that having a diet that's poor in B vitamins while pregnant, it's a bad idea. The important thing to remember here is that diseases are not common. Diseases don't come out of nowhere. They emerge whenever we alter the needed nutritional basis. When our cells and genes are waiting for essential nutrients and are not arriving, and instead they're getting substances that shouldn't be there far too many times. But how ancestors compensated for deficits and why real food is necessary, what they ate to prevent sickness, and how were they able to survive in an environment that was much more hostile than ours is today. But one of the diets that almost resembles what our ancestors probably have eaten for the majority of history, and is in theory, it looks to solve the issue of nutritional deficits, is the paleo diet. But today we have thousands of opinions in regards to many different diets as to which one might be the best. But if we look to the past, and I mean a millennia ago, we come across diets like paleo diet, which are rich in meat, plants or vegetables, dairy, and a very active lifestyle, something that we don't have today. The problem with saying that everyone should have a diet like this one is that everyone around the globe has access to different foods, also means different needs, therefore adapting to different environments, which lead to change in their genes over time. And this is also why many people from Asia are lactose intolerant, but people from Nordic countries are not. The key here is that it clearly shows that this is not the solution. Every person is different, and if we look towards the future, diets will most likely depend on our gut flora, genes, lab tests, etc., and based on that determine the appropriate foods. This is what a personalized diet is. And so if paleo diet doesn't work, you must be wondering, then what should I eat? But this is the wrong question, because you need to consider two important points. First, your body is different from mine. That means that each one of us has different needs, different nutritional requirements, different needs for physical activity, and different stress levels at which that person is exposed. The second aspect is understanding the quality of the food, the nutritional value that a piece of fruit that you're about to eat might be providing you, the amount of nutrients in each portion, the impact that has over your health, and how was that food produced. You can imagine that consuming beef that was grown with food that accelerates the growth, or vegetables that were cultivated with chemicals to eradicate the bugs, are going to have a negative impact on your health versus that of beef that was grass-fed and vegetables that were organically grown and from that current season. Trying to remember all of these things every time we're at the grocery store simply is too much, and I think so too. But if you don't want to remember all of this, simply consider the following things. Start by eliminating foods that you already know are harmful, such as corn cooking oils, canola, sugar, and other derivatives, foods with high glycemic index, and some forms of dairy, especially that cheap milk that they want to call milk. Next point is becoming aware of the origin of our foods. It's not the same eating organic versus non-organic. For example, the food that was used or the feed that was used for the cattle that's not considered organic, that type of food is harmful to the animal, creating hormonal changes that leads to faster growth. Therefore, the animal weighs more and thus more money for the farmer. The problem is that whoever eats the meat will also be affected, and I'm not referring to the amount of micronutrients that comes from the meat, such as the fats and the proteins, but the epigenetic changes that it's going to create in our DNA. These changes in DNA will determine which proteins will be built and which ones won't. The greater the DNA damage is, the more diseases we're prone to. The information our cells utilize to build the body is found in the nucleus of every cell, and we have over 37 trillion cells, and each one of those cells has over 3 billion base pairs. There's a lot of information stored in your DNA, and also many variables that are prone for errors. Now, if my genes were not affected and did not evolve over time, then why are we worried about eating better and staying healthy? It's because the DNA not only codes for things that will remain the same throughout our life, such as those genes that code for eye color, we have genetic information that doesn't express these obvious features that are visible. In fact, we have about 98 to 99% of our genome that belongs to this category, and it doesn't mean it's trash. It has a function and a response to environmental factors like stress or diet, helping us to further develop the growth and aging of our body. Basically, depending on the epigenetics, which will determine which genes to activate, when to activate them, the expression level, and how long should they remain active. This information controls everything else. This section of DNA that are what makes us different from a chimp or a fish, even though we have similar genetic makeup. Something that often goes by unnoticed is that there are those that were born with good genes but do not make good use of that information, and others that do not have great genes but make good use of that. This is where epigenetics comes into play. Picture your genes as the blueprint for your home, and epigenetics is the contractor of that project, making sure that there is enough building material, enough workers, and making sure that everything happens on schedule. The interesting aspect of epigenetics is that this is not a theory. Research has shown that genetic sequence of a 3-year-old twin brother are almost identical. However, by the time they're around 50 years of age, the differences are incredibly high, demonstrating that changes can be actively created. And there are a lot of things that we can do to create those changes in our genome, like changing our habits, thinking patterns, and diet, which will ultimately determine body function, symmetry, and overall health. Take, for example, a gene that's in charge of controlling bones. This gene will require something like calcium, vitamin D, vitamin K in order to correctly allow the expression of that gene and therefore become activated and be expressed at the correct level. Now, everything that we eat, breathe, drink, and do can affect the epigenetics. The substances that damage our genome can be divided into 2 basic categories. Toxins are harmful substances that directly affect the body, such as those things that create oxidation in our body, like junk food, radiation, alcohol, and recreational drugs. The second category are nutritional deficits and imbalances. This means not providing the raw building blocks that our body requires. It's able to keep producing the necessary substances. To prevent these nutritional deficits and the accumulation of toxins, we can see that tribes had their own customs and traditional dishes that were passed on from generation to generation. Tribes from the Yukon would first harvest the kidneys of the animals and consume those in order to prevent vitamin C deficiency, and thus preventing scurvy. This tribe didn't even know that consuming these organs would help them. They didn't even know what vitamin C was, but they knew enough to consume it in order to prevent a disease. Information like this helped other places in their population to grow into bigger cities, whereas without this information, many would have perished. Today we know that epigenetics controls our cells, and that same information can be changed through the food we consume, and it's also the main factor by which we can directly interact with our cells. This is why genetic factors that relay information can be modified to regenerate a body or a tissue, like in the case of the Yamanaka factors. Throughout cultures, especially those that are much older, all information was passed on from generation to generation through certain customs, like food, for example. If certain plant or fruit was used during pregnancy or for better development of a child, this information would be passed on by the elders. So now, what information can we learn from these traditions to stay healthy and remain healthy to prevent harmful epigenetic changes? There are commonalities in health, such as with collagen and the faster aging of the skin. If you consume animal products, consume cuts of meat that have the bone or bone broth to facilitate the consumption of raw nutrients that leads to better production of collagen. If you happen to have nutritional deficits, visceral organs from grass-fed cattle or other seafood can help you supplement a great amount of micronutrients per gram of food consumed. This is why tribes consume them, and even why animals start by consuming the visceral organs as they consume their prey. But if you don't consume animal products, keep in mind that fermented foods such as fermented vegetables can provide more nutritional biodiversity, like in the case of sprouted lentils. This means that we can absorb more iron from sprouted lentils than lentils that were cooked in boiling water. And the fermentation provides us with more bacterial diversity, which helps to produce helpful substances for our body. When it comes to the consumption of fruits and vegetables, remember that those that are out of season means that they were probably frozen, telling us that they already lost part of the nutritional benefits. Therefore, the less time it goes by from the moment the food was harvested to the moment it gets consumed, the least amount of nutrients will be lost. At this moment in time, we don't have enough information to understand the magnitude of the effect that one fruit or vegetable will have over our body. Therefore, utilizing models that have worked for thousands of years, such as those our ancestors have used, makes sense. Why is this important, and why does it even matter to put all this effort? Because today it's simply not enough to avoid alcohol or smoking. Today, the average 50-year-old has already chronic diseases, which their parents had when they were in their 60s. And it's estimated that the average millennial, which by the way don't have healthy habits, will have a life expectancy that's 10 years shorter than that of their parents. And because good food and optimal nutritional levels also affect cognitive performance, means that your optimum performance and true potential is buried under layers of symptoms, sensations, and fatigue that prevents you from achieving your goals. Many things can change by improving eating habits and epigenetics. I hope the message of this video is clear. Your body needs real food. This is a form of respect to your own body. Essentially means respecting physiological necessities that you can't change. And consuming real food is also the way of reducing nutritional deficits without the need of supplements. This also allows for the growth of healthy gut flora and a healthy body. So that's all I have for this video. Apply whatever you can. Stay curious, keep making changes, and keep improving the quality of your life. If you found this video helpful, please hit the like button and let us know what kind of content you'd like to see next. Don't forget to subscribe. This helps our channels tremendously. See you on the next one.